Hello, I'm Erik. I'm a therapist that works with addiction recovery and recovery myself. And we are going to do step 8. Step 8 is really powerful. It's a big step. Step 8 and 9, really. Why is it a big step and why is it so necessary? Because if we want to keep our relationship with God open, also to be able to acquire the grace of God, we have to stay open. And how do we stay open with people around us? We have to be kind and patient and forgiving and make amends. That when we've harmed people, if I've harmed people but not willing to go make things right, I'm staying closed off and it doesn't turn out very well. So that's just my experience here. I'm going to read a little bit. This is page 76 of the AA Big Book. Now we need more action, without which we find that faith without works is dead. Let's look at steps 8 and 9. Notice how they're together. We have a list of all persons we had harmed and to whom we are willing to make amends. We made it when we took inventory. We subjected ourselves to a drastic self appraisal. Step 4. Now we go out to our fellows and repair the damage done in the past. We attempt to sweep away the debris which has accumulated out of our effort to live on self will and run the show ourselves. That's step 3. If we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes. Remember, as agreed at the beginning, we would go to any lengths for victory over our addiction or alcohol. Probably there are still some misgivings. Yeah, that is so normal. As we look over the list of business acquaintances and friends we have hurt, we may feel diffident about going to some of them on a spiritual basis. Diffident, it means nervous, reluctant, and spiritual basis. So, what are they talking about here? Are they just going to apologize and make amends, or are they doing something spiritual? Well, we'll find out. I think it's both. I think it's when it calls for it, we share more of the spiritual aspect, and when it doesn't, we share less. It says, let us be reassured. To some people, we need not and probably should not emphasize the spiritual feature on our first approach. On our first approach, we might prejudice them. At the moment, we are trying to put our at the moment we are trying to put our lives in order. But this is not an end in itself. Our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be a maximum service to God and the people about us. So that's interesting. And then it says it's seldom wise to approach an individual who still smarts for more injustice to him and announce that we have gone religious. Huh. So that means, are we talking about us having a spiritual relationship with God? And those who still smart, this often is family members or spouses. In the prize ring, this would be called leading with the chin. Why lay ourselves open to being branded fanatic or religious bores? So Bill Wilson here is talking about that. I think we shouldn't worry about that. And this might be a little bit on the too much thinking side. It says, but a man or woman is sure to be impressed with a sincere desire to set right the wrong. And it's true. If we have a sincere desire to make things right, that's step 8 and 9. We don't use this as an excuse for shying away from the subject of God. So it says, when it will serve any good purpose, we are willing to announce our convictions with tact and common sense. So it may sound like something like this, dear boss, I have not been the best employee I could have been. I have a drinking problem or had a drinking problem. And I've had now a spiritual experience or a spiritual conviction that's helping me live on a different plane. I want to be more respectful of people in the office. I want to be more productive. I want to be on time. Please forgive me for how I've been in the past. And that's my plan. So notice it's short, it's sweet. It doesn't have to be too big of a thing there. Actually, sweet doesn't fit. Short and sweet. It doesn't have to be, you know what I mean. Um, and then there's the question about how the man we hated or we don't get along with will arise. It may be he has done us more harm than we have done him, and though we may have acquired a better attitude toward him, we are not still keen about admitting our faults. Nevertheless, with the person we dislike, we take the bit in our teeth. It is harder to go to an enemy than a friend, but we find much more beneficial to us. Why? Because it's humbling. We go to him in a helpful and forgiving spirit, confessing our former ill feeling and expressing our regret. And this does work. I found that if there was someone I wasn't really getting along with, it looks more along like this. I may not be too bold, but I might say, look, one option is I just treat them with better respect, move ahead, and that we call indirect amends. The other approach is it's more direct amends, where it's kind of an apology for our not treating them with respect. But say like I'm judging or really have some bad thoughts, I don't necessarily share them with them because it would harm them. And so that's where it says we made direct amends, except when to do so would injure them or harm others. And so, under no condition do we criticize such a person or argue. So that's the exact opposite. Simply, we tell him that we will never get over our drinking or our problem until we have done our utmost to straighten out the past. For me, I'm not sure that that's necessary. And that will come across as selfish and that I'm here to apologize just because I won't be able to stop drinking. So that I think is good writing for us to keep in mind, but we don't necessarily show that outside of our hearts there. We're there to sweep off our side of the street, realizing that nothing worthwhile can be accomplished until we do so, never trying to tell him what he should do. His faults are not discussed. We stick to our own. If our manner is calm, frank, and open, we will be gratified with the result. Again, notice it's focused on me, not them. And they may want to talk about their problems and their faults, and they say, I'm sorry too. That's okay. We don't stop them. We don't say, well, this is my amends, not yours. No, we just go with the flow, but it's really not a conversation. And so the way I think about it is it could be that my amends is over 5 minutes and then it flows into another conversation, and that's okay. It says in 9 times out of 10, the unexpected happens. Sometimes the man we are calling upon admits his own fault. So feuds of years standing melt away in an hour. Rarely do we fail to make satisfactory progress. I believe that. There's lots of amends and it works. And I've been on the receiving end of amends and it's wonderful. Like I jump for joy. I'm a therapist. I work with addicts. People come in, they were upset, they didn't like something, they didn't pay a bill. And then they come back 3 or 4 years later saying, can I do an amends with you? And it's like, are you kidding me? Sure, you can. I don't even care about the money. It's just seeing them work the steps. And I've had this happen like 2 people in the last year. The amount of courage it takes, like now I just go from, I don't know if I even remembered that they were a handful. It's just that they're just cool. We're all human beings. We all make mistakes. And in doing that, just how we make mistakes, we have to apologize, just make amends. And that's why it says, when we were wrong, promptly admit it. So it says, our former enemies sometimes praise us for what we are doing and wish us well. Occasionally, they will offer assistance. It should not matter, however, if someone throws us out of his office. We have made our demonstration, done our part. It's water over the dam. With money issues, I think it's important that to realize almost everybody has a money thing. It says we do not dodge our creditors. We tell them what we're trying to do. We make no bones about our drinking. So I think that's where it's clear that it's helpful to tell to someone that I'm an alcoholic and I'm trying to get my life manageable. A drug addict that could be useful to share, but you have to be careful of, someone with sex addiction or spending addiction. Spending addiction might be okay, but with money, sometimes it's better just to stick to the money. And that's why often I do step 10 and 11 to teach us how to pray so that when we're doing this, we're asking God for guidance. It says, nor are we afraid of disclosing our alcoholism on the theory it may cause financial harm. Approached in this way, the most ruthless creditor will sometimes surprise us. Arranging the best deal we can, let these people know we are sorry. Our drinking has made us slow to pay. We must lose our fear of creditors no matter how far we have to go, for we are liable to drink or use our drug if we are afraid to face them. This is true. And this is why a loving, kind sponsor, but firm to say, no, it's really important to just ask, how are money things? And I've seen wonderful amends done in this. Perhaps we have committed a criminal offense. This is another big thing which might land us in jail. Again, lots of prayer, guidance to see what the right action is. Ultimately, we want a relationship with God. And if we have that blocked because we just can't be honest, we choose that. And that's why the book is pretty clear. It says, but we are sure we'll be in prison or lose our job if we were known. And so that it goes into this. And it's a great little story here. I'd recommend this. There are different types of amends: direct, indirect, amends in kind, letters, and living amends. We'll read this and then we'll talk about it. Although these reparations take innumerable forms, there are some general principles which we find guiding. Reminding ourselves that we have decided to go to any lengths to find the spiritual experience, we ask that we be given strength and direction to do the right thing. That's step 10 and 11. No matter what the personal consequences may be. We may lose our position or reputation or face jail, but we are willing. We have to be. We must not shrink at anything. So let's talk about this: direct, indirect, amends in kind, letters, and living amends. So direct amends are in person. Okay, it's face to face. It's very, very powerful to come to someone and say, look, I'm so sorry. I blamed you, mom and dad, for all my troubles. I was a handful when I was a teenager. I've held grudges against you, having standards that were probably unrealistic. I expected too much. And I could have been much more grateful to you and seen the positive. But my addiction or my personality wanted to look at the negative, and then so doing kind of held on to grudges. So please forgive me. So about that works if that's what it looks like. But this is where it goes very different in every situation. Some parents might go, I really don't think that that's helpful because you've stolen, you've lied, you've done this. So the next amends is an indirect amends, which is somehow repairing the damage behind the scenes. It may be prayer. I do think it's handy to write out a direct amends and a letter, seal it and date it in such a way so that if you needed to show that, well, I really wanted to do this back in spring of 2025, that you could have done that, especially say like it's a divorce situation. So an indirect amends could be considered a letter, which is also mentioned there. It could be living amends, which is trying to live a better life, staying sober, going to meetings, paying bills on time. Say like I've been damaging the family by being incredibly irresponsible. So just getting to meetings, working a program, not work like me, but letting God work in me and doing my own step work, step 10 and 11 daily helps me repair the damage, because in step 10 and 11, you'll learn that we're asking God for direction in everything. We're asking for freedom from self-will, self-directed, self-powered. We're looking at our own defects and asking God to remove those. Well, what better amends is there if that's what I'm doing? Because I'm being a better person, a sober person. Indirect amends, let's see. Well, let's go to amends in kind. Okay. Say, like, I'm married and then my addiction just deteriorates. We end up divorced. How can I make amends to my ex wife? Well, going to her right now won't really help. And so that's an indirect amends. My sponsor might have me write it out. But say, like, I get married, hopefully with few years of sobriety, good, clean, solid program, treating my new wife with the same respect or with better respect, being sober is kind of an amends in kind. Or if my parents were um, passed away, unfortunately, and I was not able to make direct amends to them, I might be at their grave doing indirect amends with a letter. But there may be people in general that are older that I respect, and treating them with respect. An amends in kind would look like, say, like I had a business that fell apart and the employees ran for cover or ran away because of my addiction like stuff. I have a new company. This time I want to do it right. Treating those employees, paying them on time is an amends in kind. So you get the point. Letters. Letters are really powerful, but in my little experience, they don't replace something that could be done in person. And that's why, as soon as we can, we try to make direct amends. Really, really important to do that because people can pass away. And then we feel just awful about the situation. And, we think, wow, I could have done this in person. Um, so the can take, so we're in the context of a criminal possibility. We may lose our position or reputation or face jail, but we are willing. We have to be. We must not shrink at anything. So, an indirect amends in that context might be following the law, not breaking any more laws. I've seen people who stole things where if they went to the store to return them, they might lose their current job. So then they might buy a gift card or they might, and give those out to strangers at the store, or they may somehow pay for something extra because they were stealing. And this could be when they were a teenager and now they're 40 years old. But they want to make those amends. And you will feel much better having made those amends. Some people go, I'm 40 years old. I'm going to say when I was 16, I stole about $200 from the store. Please accept this $200. Sometimes managers don't know what to do with this, but a lot of times they may go, oh, yeah, I get this. I've seen gift cards given out. Or just giving to a charity. Say, like, oh, this is a good one. I realized this is really important to share. For those that had struggled with pornography, how are they going to make amends to the people that they harmed, either by having inappropriate relationships with them or the pornography people? Those are people and they were harmed. I found that praying for those people every single day, anybody we've harmed, we can pray for in hopes that God would really work on their lives. Second of all, we could give money to a charity that helps someone out of that industry, because many of times it's out of coercion. I mean, it's just a horrible thing. It's really a dark thing. Say, like, someone did something really bad to their person who was giving them the drugs. How do they fix that? They don't want to go back to their pusher because they'll go relapse. So an amends in kind is a really good idea to treat their sponsor really well. I had a situation where it was interesting. This person felt he had mistreated a girlfriend, and he's writing out his amends, and he's jogging, and just regular jog. And after 20 years, sees this person, and it was just as simple as this. They chatted, they said hello, and all this, and niceties. And he basically said, I feel really bad. Back then, I was really not treating people the best I could, and I probably mistreated you. And without saying the graphic nature of the details of something sexually, he was able to convey that in a manner that didn't injure her or him. And that's how we could see that God offered that opportunity for an amends. Oh, I remember this. This was fascinating. I was feeling like I needed to reconnect with some friends that I had just dropped off from connection for years, actually, years, like 20 years. And I was praying about this, and I see them at a big, large department store, like a warehouse store. It's like, whoa, like, wow! I didn't even really ask, but within 1 or 2 days, so then right there, I was mentioning things to them, and then was able to just casually apologize and say, "I'm sorry, I haven't been in contact with you about this and this and this." Recently, there was someone else I hadn't been in contact with, and that I just texted them recently, and I need to follow up on that to connect with them. So if we're actually serious about this, we're going to look at every day, what did I do wrong? It sounds like it would be depressing. It really isn't. It's very, very powerful. Let's continue on our journey here. And this would be good to read on your own. In this case, this man who had a previous wife and there was lost alimony, he writes her a letter. It turns out well. It says, before taking drastic action, which might implicate other people, we secure their consent. If we obtain permission, we have consulted with others. So really consult with your sponsors, consult with people, ask God to help, and the drastic step is indicated. We must not shrink. Um, Domestic troubles, talking about infidelity. So this one, I will say that I think is useful reading, but I think that there's better ways, and I don't want to be critiquing too much what's done here, but you can read it and go, yeah, there's probably a higher standard of what. And I'll just say that it's kind of like, well, if I can forget, she can forget. And I'm not sure that forgetting is forgiving, yes, but I think that we addicts sometimes the question is, how will I mend the relationship? It's all about mending this. And it says, whatever the situation, we usually have to do something about it. If we are sure our wife does not know, should we tell her? Not always, we think. Okay, so that's where I put the question mark. This is about, maybe online pornography or some sexual affair. If she knows in a general way that we've been wild, should we tell her in detail? Undoubtedly, we should admit our fault. She may insist on knowing all the particulars. She will want to know who the woman is and where she is. So this is where some discretion is helpful. And we feel we ought to say to her that we have no right to involve the other person. Now, on the other side, the woman, the dear wife may say, you involved the other person when you had the relationship with her. So how dare you? So that's where we have to be prayerful about this. Always prayerful and ask God. And that's why a lot of times I do steps 10 and 11 before we even look at 8 and 9. And we have just completed step 7. We have those defects in hand. Then we go and learn how to do what's described in pages 84 to 88. Then when we do step 8 and 9, it's really helpful. It says, we are sorry for what we have done, and God willing, it shall not be repeated. More than that, we cannot do. We have no right to go further. So, see, this is where you can just Judge for yourself what's useful there. Um, yeah, I like this phrase. Each might pray about it, having the other's one's happiness uppermost in mind. That's really good for anything, whether it's repairing damage with your children. People ask, well, how much should you tell a child? Well, I think that obviously prayer and then age appropriateness in terms of explaining daddy or mom had a problem with the substance or addiction. I think it helps to tell them. It certainly doesn't work to keep these things secret because then the kids end up learning that secrets are good and then they end up struggling. This is a good phrase. If we have no such complication, there is plenty we should do at home. Okay. Sometimes we hear an alcoholic or an addict say the only thing he needs to do is to keep sober. That's not the half of it. And so when I do step work with someone, either professionally or as a sponsor, I kind of say, let's write out together what she or he would say about you. You want your information that you're sharing are the harms bigger than what she feels. If you only think you did a little bit and then she goes, but he did this, it's not going to fly. If you come up with a little bit more than what she sees, it's often a good thing there. I like this phrase. Um, the alcoholic is like, or an addict is like a tornado roaring his way through the lives of others. Hearts are broken, sweet relationships are dead, affections have been uprooted, selfish and inconsiderate habits have kept the home in turmoil. We feeling a man or woman is unthinking when they say that sobriety is enough. He's like the farmer who came up out of his cyclone cellar to find his home ruined. To his wife, he remarked, don't see anything the matter here, Ma. Ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing? That's because in early recovery, we usually have denial. And in fact, we look back and go, how I must not have been fun to live with because at least I had my drug of choice. Now I know how to be sober, but at the beginning stages, we're really rough around the edges. It says, yes, there's a long period of reconstruction ahead. We must take the lead. A remorseful mumbling that we are sorry won't fill the bill at all. We ought to sit down with the family and frankly analyze the past as we now see it, being very careful not to criticize them. Their defects may be glaring, but the chances are that our own actions are partly responsible. It's true. It's easy to go, but they did this. Yeah, but just let's assume that my addiction certainly did not help. And it might actually have caused some of this. So we clean house with the family, asking each morning in meditation that our Creator or God show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. This is meant to be taken literally. We want to do that morning meditation and prayer. We ask God to show us patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. If we're not doing that, I have concern that we're then continuing to have problems, you know? And yeah, we're not working the program at that point. The spiritual life is not a theory, we have to live it. This is a big deal. This is, I think, what separates those in recovery or those who just go to meetings. Recovery is actually practicing these steps one day at a time. Okay. We'll continue on. Unless one's family expresses a desire to live upon spiritual principles, we think we ought not to urge them. We should not talk incessantly to them about spiritual matters. They will change in time. Our behavior will convince them more than our words. Wow, so it sounds like speaking about spiritual matters could be part of the steps, or I mean, step 9. It could be. But I've found that my actions will speak louder than words. There are some wrongs we can never fully right. We don't worry about them if we can honestly say to ourselves that we would right them if we could. By the way, I've had some things and it's like it would make me feel bad. I felt a dilemma. I felt the way it was to be living amends, indirect amends, but not to do a direct amends. And I felt many times the only reason I wouldn't is because it would hurt a number of people. But this phrase, but I would make it fully right if I could. Yeah, that's true. I would. So that's mending. Because a lot of words can be said, but if our attitudes are not there, that's not helpful. Some people cannot be seen. We send them an honest letter. And there may be a valid reason for postponement in some cases, but we don't delay if it can be avoided. We should be sensible, tactful, considerate, humble without being servile or scraping. As God's people, we stand on our feet. We don't crawl before anyone. Okay, really helpful there. So we are going to look at doing a little sample. This will go much faster than the other one. But you can see here, I just make it, this could be on paper. It doesn't need to be a fancy chart. I did find that if we didn't have a chart, sometimes people then, it just gets lost. So a chart is usually a good thing. So my mom, what did I do? I lied, stole some money. This is where it might be useful to list these here like this. Disrespectful. Dad, kind of distanced myself from him. Wife, I judged her, held her in contempt. This is what pretend to be Mark again, avoidance. Son, what was the harm? Inwardly, I was upset with his cancer. I'm making up some good things to help you see the difference here. So we'll go through. Mom, the defect of character is dishonesty. Now, this is extra. Sometimes you really don't need to do that. The remedy is being honest, an apology, money, pay it back, acknowledge it, and you would be prayerful about that. It probably wouldn't harm the parents to know you stole money. Maybe there's an occasion where just putting it back secretly is the way to do it. Treating her respectfully. This is a good example where our friend Mark kind of said mom is a control freak, critical, and all this. Just say, Mom, I'm sorry. I was upset with you. I saw you as a control freak. And, that's not helpful. Yeah, so we don't do that. And it doesn't have to be all or nothing. I might have an honest conversation with her, but not bring up everything. So we have direct amends. Most parents, you're going to have a direct amends. Indirect, well, we'll call it living. There you go. Dad, distance myself from him. If I go to him and say, Dad, I've been distancing myself, it might harm him. So just, avoidance was my defect. Start to connect with him, respect him. I don't want help from whatever's trying to put that in there. Pray for him. Prayer. Wife, again, we wouldn't want to go in, we inwardly had all this negative vibes. So just start to connect with her. Pray for her. Ask God for right direction. Son, inwardly, I was upset with his cancer. Of course, this is going to be a living amends. Um, and living, well, direct and living, and maybe with son, it would be a direct amends if, Mark was using in a way that son knows. And so a nice conversation. And what this is practiced with a sponsor. And it's helpful to know what the defect is so that we don't replicate it. So avoidance and blame and lack of insight, obviously. But it's understandable someone is really upset. Let's say the government. What? The government, did he harm? Well, he judged them. Judged. Maybe slow to pay taxes. So defective character, twisting things. Here, paying debt. I'm praying for government. This may sound awfully saintly. Well, the book does talk about we're not saints. We're willing to grow along spiritual lines. So you get the idea, okay? And I might make some other videos on this to kind of demonstrate the principles of, a deeper look. So this is not meant to be all inclusive. I will finish here with the promises. Now you'll hear these promises read at many meetings. And at first I thought, oh, they're just the promises of the whole program. They are, but this is the promises of step 9, which go, if we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we'll be amazed before we are halfway through. We're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them. So a few things here. Our work is really to simply do the steps and let God do the heavy lifting. And when it says we'll be amazed before we are halfway through. Halfway through what? This phase of our development, which is our amends. So, and that I see this all the time. People go, I can't believe this. And it's really quite joyous to make amends. It works really well. And then we realize, wow, this is what we should have done years ago. And then we developed a manner of living which is now rigorously honest for those that are recalling what's said in step 5 or chapter 5 at the beginning. So anyway, I wish you, prayer and peace and insight, as you pray about these things and making your amends. Feel free to leave comments or questions because the 8th step and 9th step, we may go into different videos talking about what about infidelity more in depth, what to do more with legal situations, what to do with money situations, and what to do with children or adult children. Those 4 things I work with all the time. You take care and we'll see you in step 10 and 11.